what it is that happens for men internally as far as when faced with conflict or things that are one of the things is that I think men are socially programmed or socially learn the way that we handle emotions. We're taught from an early age that men need to be strong or that boys need to be strong and not show emotion. I think a lot of that is changing for people, but I'm aging myself. But I know in my growing up, that was something that was kind of ingrained, not so much from my parents as much as it was just from friends and being in school and that sort of thing. And so if you show emotions or if you cry or show any sort of negative emotions, except maybe for anger, that was something that was kind of shunned or looked down upon. So if you felt hurt or sad or started crying or anything like that, that was seen as a sign of weakness, or just being vulnerable in general is seen as a sign of weakness for a lot of men. But one of the other questions that came up around just men expressing emotions is, why do men tend to shut down when faced with difficult things or conflict in relationships? And I think, as much as anything, there's a lot of different reasons for that, and it can be different from person to person. But I think a big part of it is that men tend to process emotions more internally rather than externally. I think a lot of women in particular are kind of programmed to talk about their problems. And when they get with other, particularly other women or even their partner, they tend to um, work through those problems and those feelings by talking about them. And again, that's something that was socially learned. I mean, they saw it modeled from other women in their lives. And it's easier, I think, for women to do that. But also, I think the other thing that has to be taken into consideration is, there's two kind of personality types that most of us have. And a lot of people are familiar with these terms, and that is introversion versus extroversion. Extroverted people are really socially wired. One statistic I heard was is that 60% of people are really more wired as extroverts. And so those people just naturally, when they are under stress, they want to process externally, or they want to decompress externally. They like to get with a lot of people. They like to be in the midst of the party, and all of those kinds of things are more energizing. And so being around a lot of people, a lot of interactions for someone that is extroverted is the way that they recharge their battery. They feel much more fulfilled. Introverts are people that are more introverted in their personality style, need quite the opposite. They need to kind of pull in, need to kind of process internally and spend time alone or by themselves or just one on one with someone. Introverted people tend to be maybe a little more sensitive to big crowds, to being around a lot of people. And so those folks do need to kind of turn inward to be able to kind of process things that are harder. Neither one is right or wrong. It's just two different styles. It's kind of like, what's your favorite color? It's just it's not necessarily a preference, but it's something that we kind of learn from a young age of how to process stress and how to process times when we might feel overwhelmed. And so I don't know the statistics on it, but I think and for the most part, men tend to be more introverted than extroverted. And so I think that's another factor that just kind of plays into how men process emotions. I think a lot of times I hear this a lot doing couples therapy. When I ask my husband or ask my partner how they're feeling about something, it's hard for them to pin that down. There's just not the language, or it doesn't feel as easy to come up with or as easy to access. And there's nothing wrong with that, so to speak. It's just that it maybe takes a little bit of time. It might be that they just need to think about it a little bit and be able to put the words around it. I know that I'm that way as well. When I'm asked about what I'm experiencing internally, I need a moment to kind of collect my thoughts and really kind of put the words to it. And even though I'm a therapist and I understand about emotions and understand what goes on in people's internal world, it takes me a minute to kind of do that. So I think it's not so much that men shut down, it's just maybe they need the space to kind of think about what it is they're experiencing, to be able to put the words to it. And so I think in relationships, particularly uh, in situations like that, when there's conflict, to be able to recognize what your partner needs in that moment in order to process what is going on internally, and also for it to feel safe. And that is a huge one there. I think for a lot of men, to express their emotions doesn't feel safe. In other words, they feel like they're going to be attacked for feeling what they're feeling or expressing what they're feeling, or to be able to be vulnerable. And again, that goes back to a lot of the social learning that most of us grew up with, particularly in Western cultures and that sort of thing. So, hopefully, this is helpful, and we'll have more of your questions answered. And leave your questions in the comments or just make comments down below. And do take time to follow us or subscribe to this particular channel. And glad you're along in this journey.